Good afternoon on this Wednesday, December 11th. I'm Yubna Naufal, and these are today's headlines. Snowstorm Alexa starts lashing Lebanon amid heightened precautions across the country. Former Prime Minister Saad Hariri responds to a local media report which hints that the late Brigadier General Wissam al-Hassan was involved in Hariri's 2005 assassination. And the Gulf Cooperation Council calls on Hezbollah's militias to withdraw from Syria. Lebanon is witnessing its first snowfall this year in the northern and eastern region as a storm lashes amid heightened precautions by citizens and authorities. Meanwhile, thousands of Syrian refugees are battling freezing temperatures, snow and rain flooding their camps. Linda Tamim has the latest.
Heavy rainfall and snow have been pouring over Lebanon since last night, mainly in Akkad, Hirmil and Baalbek. Alexa, this winter's first harsh storm, is only beginning, as weather forecasts predict several days of rain and a steep drop in temperature. Snow could in fact reach as low as 500 meters above sea level in the evening. Authorities have been on high alert for days and have urged citizens to take precautions, especially on the roads. Reports say vehicles of the Public Works and Transport Ministry are working around the clock and all stations are on full alert. As part of the authorities' measures, Education Minister Hassan Diab ordered the closure of public and private schools across the country. The Civil Aviation Authority says flight activities at the Beirut Rafiq Hariri International Airport will continue uninterrupted and any eventual change in the schedule of takeoffs and landings will be announced. Earlier this week, Social Affairs Minister Wael Abu Faour said authorities, in cooperation with the UN Refugee Agency UNHCR, were mobilizing to help Syrian refugees living in makeshift camps ahead of the storm. The UNHCR has worked around the clock, partnering in recent days with the Lebanese army to distribute winter supplies including thermal blankets and money for heaters. Amin Awad, the Syria Refugee Response Coordinator for UNHCR, says the agency is providing support at 3 levels: for displaced communities, for the local government, and for host communities.
This is one of the harshest winters that, according to any forecast that you may get hold of, probably in the last 100 years. We have started our winterization program earlier this year. We are distributing winterization kits inside Syria, but also in surrounding countries. The kerosene, the insulations for tents, the plastic sheeting, the waterproofing in collective centers, the cash for fuel, and also warm clothing, especially for vulnerable people and children.
But despite the efforts, UNHCR says there are concerns for thousands of people living in more than 200 informal camps in central and north Lebanon. In northern Nasser, just across the border from Syria, layers of snow sat atop flimsy shelters housing tens of thousands of recently arrived refugees. But the vast majority of the camps are in the Bekaa Valley region in East Lebanon, where temperatures regularly dip below zero and winter brings snow and rain. Other refugees are living in unfinished buildings with only slightly more protection from the elements in the city, including the capital Beirut. The growing number of refugees is an important challenge for international aid agencies and host communities alike. At least 835,000 registered Syrian refugees are living in Lebanon, and the number is still increasing.
2 residents of the Jebel Muhsin district in the northern city of Tripoli were injured when assailants shot them as part of the sectarian attacks gripping the city. Samir al-Aswad was wounded in the abdomen, while Haidar Sofyan was shot in his leg, according to the state-run national news agency. The Lebanese army sent reinforcements to al-Badawi after the shooting. Now, sectarian attacks against Alawites from Jebel Muhsin has increased lately. The latest assault earlier this month brought a new round of deadly gun battles between the district and the rival Sunni neighborhood of Beit Tabbani. State Commissioner to the Military Court, Judge Sa'ir, charged several Jebel Muhsin suspects for their involvement in the clashes. He referred them to First Military Examining Magistrate Riyad Abu Rida. The Lebanese government authorized the army to take control of Tripoli for 6 months following the 3 days of sectarian fighting. In other local news, former Prime Minister Saad Hariri responded to a local media report which hinted that the late Brigadier General Wissam al-Hassan was involved in his father's 2005 assassination, saying such allegations were merely part of the campaign to tarnish the image of the Special Tribunal for Lebanon. If the aim was another historical chapter of the campaign against the International Tribunal as the trial date draws near, then we say to those who broadcast the interview that they missed such a chance and that the date when justice will prevail has come. According to Hariri's statement, this comes after Al Jadid aired yesterday an interview with Bo Astrom, one of the investigators of the UN International Independent Investigation Commission, which probed the assassination of former PM Rafiq Hariri, saying that Hassan's unusual absence from Hariri's convoy, which blew up, was suspicious. And the IE Alumni Association in Lebanon is in collaboration with the Spanish Embassy in Beirut and the Department of Economics at AUB hosted a panel discussion titled Lebanon and Spain, Two Countries, One Vision Out of the Economic Crisis, with former Finance Minister Misray Al-Hassan speaking about the current situation of the economy in the country and mentioning a few positives.
The prospects for a reversal in the economic dynamics for Lebanon are very bleak, at least for 2014. And this is even at the admission of the Minister of Finance himself, who estimated the growth rates to be close to 0%, and which is a worse expectation than that of the IMF and the World Bank. So the prospects are looking very bleak. And the reason for that being is that the political context is still very complicated. The society is more polarized than ever. I see the fact that there's not going to be any resolving of the Syrian situation anytime soon. It's going to be impacting negatively the Lebanese economy as a result of the influx of the Syrian refugees on the social context of Lebanon and on the economic context. I see the physical discipline is not being honored at all. I see a lot of spending, irresponsible spending, frankly, on the part of this current government, which is exacerbating the deficit situation and that is putting additional pressure on the debt dynamics in the country. The few things that, we, I think, have one step ahead. And we're very proud of our financial sector. Obviously, our banking system is one of the soundest pillars in our economy, and along with the supervisory and the regulatory framework, I think our banking sector is doing quite well. Some critics may say that even the central bank is playing a bit of a role that extends outside its mandate a bit, but I think at least having monetary authorities that are trying to play an active role in the economy by trying to promote growth through some of the financial packages that it's providing and through its supervisory and regulatory framework, I think we can stand comforted by the fact that at least with the high foreign exchange reserves that we have and with the monetary policies that are being implemented, financial stability for the time being is assured, and there is no imminent pressures on the Lebanese lira. So at least we can come out of this panel, with some, relief that not all is bad. Actually, there are some positive, elements. And even the 1.5% growth rate that we are seeing currently is better than nothing, right? I mean, we could be in a recession, but at least there is some, very small growth rates. But at least there is growth rate that is being driven by whether the Syrian consumption or whether by the export increase or by port activity or what have you. At least we are seeing some growth rates, albeit very modest, but at least growth rates are still there.
The Gulf Cooperation Council is condemning the latest bombings that shook Lebanon and is calling on Hezbollah's militias to withdraw from Syria. The 6 Arab monarchies of the Gulf said in a statement at the end of their 2-day summit in Kuwait City that they condemned the terrorist bombings that left innocent casualties in the country. Lebanon has been rocked with a series of bombings, mainly in the Hezbollah strongholds of Beirut's southern suburbs and the eastern Ba'a Valley. The latest bombings were suicide attacks targeting the Iranian embassy in November. 2 blasts have also targeted Sunni mosques in the northern city of Tripoli. The council urged all Lebanese parties to put their nation's interest above any other. The statement also called for the swift formation of a new government to preserve the Lebanese entity and steer it clear of the repercussions of the Syrian crisis. Coming up next, Time Magazine names their Person of the Year for 2013. Stay with us to find out who topped the list. Welcome back. Ukrainian police and protesters are clashing again outside Kiev's City Hall after security forces attempted to retake the building occupied by hundreds of protesters. Police have used truncheons while protesters responded with sticks, and demonstrators inside the building sprayed the police with extremely cold water from a fire hose, forcing security forces to retreat to police buses in the sub-zero temperatures. Police ended up moving away from the building, having failed to wrest it from the hundreds of protesters inside. Meanwhile, the Interior Minister said Independence Square, where protesters remained through the night, will not be stormed again and urged for calm. In an escalation of the protests that have been going on for weeks, security forces in the Ukraine did storm a protest on Tuesday night and into Wednesday morning, ripping down barricades and tents in the capital of Kiev. French President François Hollande has said that France's intervention in the Central African Republic is dangerous but necessary to avoid a bloodbath. Accompanied by Laurent Fabius, the French foreign minister, Hollande arrived on Tuesday in the violence-hit country where 2 French soldiers were recently killed. They were carrying out operations against militias in the capital Bangui, where sectarian violence between Muslims and Christians have been taking place. Upon his arrival in Bangui, the French leader took a moment to bow before the coffins of the 2 fallen soldiers. Antoine Lequignot, aged 22, and Nicolas Vaucaire, 23, were both members of the crack 8th Parachute Regiment based at Castres in southwestern France. The French campaign to pacify its former colony is necessary if one wants to avoid carnage here, Hollande said in his first remarks. More than 500 people have been killed over the past week in the sectarian fighting. On to another president. U.S. President Barack Obama's disapproval rating has hit a record high, due mainly to the disastrous debut of his health care law, according to an NBC News Wall Street Journal poll. A total of 54% of those surveyed disapprove of how he is doing his job, which is the highest mark in his presidency. That is up from 51% in late October, according to the survey. The numbers are also dismal on specific aspects of his leadership. Only 28% give Obama high grades for being able to achieve goals, which is down 16 points from January, and 37% give him high marks for being honest and straightforward, down 5 points from June. The bitterly divided Congress also gets a resounding thumbs down. A total of 51% of those polled view this 113th Congress as one of the worst ever with regard to performance and accomplishments. The poll was conducted December 4th through 8th among 1,000 adults and had a margin of error of 3.1 points. The funeral cortege of Nelson Mandela has passed through the streets of Pretoria, and South Africa's first black president will now lie in state for 3 days before being sent to his final resting place. The procession, which will be repeated on Thursday and Friday mornings, passes the one-time home of Paul Kruger, who was the president of the Transvaal and led a resistance movement against British rule during the First Anglo-Boer War, which began in 1880, and will pass at Central Prison, where Mandela was jailed in 1962 for incitement and leaving the country illegally. His conviction and subsequent life sentence marked the beginning of a 27-year jail stint from which he finally emerged in 1990 as the structure of apartheid crumbled around its white minority supporters. The funeral procession will be repeated for 3 days, ending each time at the Union Buildings, the seat of government where previous presidents had signed aspects of the apartheid system into law. Time has named its Person of the Year for 2013, and it's Pope Francis, the first Jesuit pontiff who won hearts and headlines with his humility and common touch. The iconic title goes every year to the individual chosen by Time editors as someone who has had the most impact on the world and the news, for better or worse, over the past year. The magazine staff makes the ultimate decision, managing editor Nancy Gibbs says, but they poll readers and take public opinion into account. The Argentinian was elected Pope in March, just weeks after the surprise abdication of his predecessor, Pope Emeritus Benedict. Pope Francis beat out several other heavyweights on the short list for Person of the Year, including the person who held the title in 2012, President Obama. Edward Snowden, an American fugitive and former National Security Administration contractor who leaked thousands of top-secret documents about U.S. surveillance programs, ranked second in the Times list. And on that note, we end our bulletin for today. Let me remind you of our top stories. Snowstorm Alexa starts lashing Lebanon amid heightened precautions across the country. Former Prime Minister Saad Hariri responds to a local media report which hints that the late Brigadier General Wissam al-Hassan was involved in Hariri's 2005 assassination. And the Gulf Cooperation Council calls on Hezbollah's militias to withdraw from Syria. Those are your midweek headlines live on Future Television in Beirut. I'm Yumna Naufal. Keep warm and weather the storm.